Hi everyone, ever wondered if what you're reading online is actually true? I did too. That's why during the Google's Gemini intensive course in Kaggle, I built a fact checking agent. The goal was simple to create an AI that can verify the claims that user input. Think of it as a reality check for the internet, popping up on the social media to highlight the questionable info. To make this happen, my AI needed data. I explored two main ways to find facts. One is using the existing databases, and secondly is more dynamically tapping into the power of Google search for the latest information. For the simplicity of this project, I focused on two specific databases: SciFact for the scientific claims and Climate Fever for the climate related info. I am parallelly showing you the block that contains the info in much more detailed manner. So you can see my initial thoughts that reflect the user's info, and then I take science or climate DB when the question is with respect to the science or climate, and use the grounded Gemini. However, this is just a rough architecture. I'll take you to the main architecture here. But before we go into that, let's look into how the existing data can be used. In general, if you have a data like the facts, so they are encoded using an encoder, converted into embeddings, and stored into the vector database like ChromaDB. And then when we have a sentence, we encode it again, find the embedding, and we can retrieve the closest data that exists using some similarity metrics that is provided by the vector databases. So the idea here was to use the power of this vector database for the known facts. To make the results easy to understand, I designed a simple color-coded output, that is the green for supported claims, gray for if you cannot comment on a given sentence, and red for the contradictory claims. So let's look into the final architecture. So what do I do is I take the user input. So we have the function calling, which is coming from the Gemini API. So that intelligently calls, I have provided a separate function for search science fact, and separate another function for search climate fact, another function that fact checks using Gemini 2.0 Flash, and obviously we need the grounded Gemini 2.0 Flash. So once a user provides the input, if it's a science, this function would be called dynamically, and if it's a climate related, this would be called. And post that, what do we get? We get the facts. So now then the Gemini 2.0 Flash here will comment based on the facts that are derived from the database. And this output then would be converted into a structured response and given in the output. Similarly, if the data would not have been present in the database and is much more of a dynamic content, the grounded Gemini 2.0 Flash would be used, and the response would be converted into a structured response. So the cool part is this automation, the automatic function calling with Gemini. Instead of manually telling which function has to be called, Gemini here automatically does the function call. We get a simplified output at the end. Of course, there are limitations. Relying on Google search means the accuracy depends on the search results, and yeah, let's do a quick run through. So this is the function call, the various functions, and we are giving the instruction here what each function does and a step-by-step thinking process how it could approach the problem. And at the end, then we have the structured output generation, which is provided here where we have defined the enum and it provides the structured output. Yo, that's the project. Now I will also take you through quickly the fact check agent here. So you would need a Google API, which we would use. Then we have defined the functions. So once we have the functions here, so what do we do? We have fact checker, right? So what does the fact checker do? It takes the facts that are pumped out of the DB, which are closer to the query, and these facts are then used in order to fact check. Bang, we have the next function, check Google. This function checks Google. Example, RCB won IPL 2024. This is not part of science or climate DB, right? So here it would be called. Yeah, that was a testing call that you just saw up, but here I can show you how exactly the flow would look like. So here we have a create chat. It gets the response. RCB did not win, right? Then what happens? This structured converter, and this would then also convert it into a structured format of red. Hmm, interesting. Yes, so that's what we have achieved in this project. Yeah, it was really a wonderful experience. Yeah, thank you. Hit subscribe and press a like.